Welcome back to the Sutherland Report. Thank you so much for joining me. As I've said in previous discussions, previous interviews in my political series, as we are bang in the middle now of an election on the 4th of July, the days are flying by. One of the joys is when you interview young people who are a real inspiration because they are interested in what's happening in their country and they are interested in the political process. So I'm going to bring on my friend again, Jamie Rippingale, and we, he, us, the whole of us are going to have a conversation where Jamie is going to give us, in his words, an overview on how he thinks things are going and where the country is at. Jamie, once again, sir, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to bring my lovely UK map that I've been using for all my interviews. And here we go. This is the UK, Jamie, as you know it, as I know it, and informing our international viewers, my international viewers. Jamie, what in your perspective is going on in the country? What event has happened that you think has suddenly made this whole election come alive?
Oh wow! To start with, I mean, when we talked about 4 weeks ago, we wasn't expecting a general election, and all of a sudden, snap. And as the party said, and as people said, it was a boring campaign. Things weren't getting done. You had stuttering Starmer, and you had a flip-flop Sunak, and then all of a sudden, Reform announced Nigel Farage, and just like that, in a heartbeat, Reform have gone from 20,000 members to 55,000 members. We're up in the polls. It's insane to see this complete gravitational movement in terms of political influence. Just people coming out the woodwork, and as I've said previously with the previous interview, the Fed Up People's Party grows, and it's certainly growing even more.
He then announced that he was running for Clacton. He previously had written a letter saying he's going to concentrate on the election in America, on the presidential election. In your opinion, what changed his mind? I mean, he has expressed it, but I'd like to hear what your analysis is.
I think he gave his own view, and I think he saw an opportunity. He saw that Reform were doing well, but there was comments, posts, articles, so much speculation to say, imagine if he joined, imagine if Farage joined, it would be the turning point. And it's gone from the Tories, considering, they might be the opposition party, and now Reform, all of a sudden, we're neck and neck with the Tories, and some polls are putting us above the Tories. So I think Farage saw an opportunity, and he's taken it just like that, because I think that's what needs to be done. He certainly made the right decision in my eyes. It's no one's predicted this. I think even Professor John Curtis didn't predict the movement it would cause. He's gone from saying Reform won't win any seats to saying we'll win a couple of seats.
He has, actually. I mean, I've been listening to him, and even with the few interviews that I have done so far, and I am doing more. There's a number to do, and I say to anyone, please just get hold of me. The nearer we get to the election, I hope that more and more that will happen. That will be great to help get the message out there for people. Because what is happening as I am interviewing people, I'm meeting incredible people who care about their this is important, their constituency. They care about that. They're meeting people, they're understanding the needs. And 99% of them actually live in the constituencies that they're actually standing so far that I have met. So Nigel changed his mind. He came back and he is standing in the Clacton seat.
Yes.
What about the press coverage that he is then garnering, that he is attracting? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, he's a political firebrand. You know, he's like Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. So there's going to be some mixed takes, some mixed opinions. I think the early coverage when he got milkshaked, for example, was extremely biased. I'm glad politicians from both parties, for example, they came out in condemning this. Although there was a couple political commentators such as Owen Jones saying, you know, it's not the end of the world, stuff like that. I mean, at the end of the day, he was attacked, and then we saw it in Barnsley. And the media coverage, yet again, was lukewarm to do with that, not condemning it properly. I mean, the Joe Cox Foundation, for example, condemned it and said we stand in unity with Farage. And I think that's extremely touching, especially because, you know, such a great lady what she was, and she died for politics, she died for democracy. It's the same thing in terms of the message it's spreading. So I think the media has been, you know, 50-50. I mean, you look at GB News, they've been covering with intensity, but to maintain balance, they've scrutinised him, going back on his promise, for example. And then he's been taking part in the leaders' debates, which is just remarkable. He cooks with gas, Farage. I don't think there's any party's got an answer to him, to be totally honest. So, you know, the media has a real opportunity to target him with any questions they want. And we saw it with Good Morning Britain this morning, for example, how they spoke to him about some completely off-topic questions, nothing about the manifesto, talking to him about a couple of candidates which were Facebook friends with, you know, a leader of the British Union or something, and which is easily debunked, and it's easily said that, you know, nobody knows who he is on Facebook. So Farage is like, why are you giving this national limelight when we've just launched a contract with you, as you can see behind me? So, you know, I definitely think, as I said previously, there is some media bias, especially towards reform. You can see we're rocking the boat.
Could you explain who you're helping, which candidates you're helping, the areas that you're working
Yeah.
in, and the things that you're observing there? And there is a reason for this.
Yeah,
And
well,
I will broaden that question out.
Well, I'm helping Matt Wood. He's the candidate for Crewe and Nantwich. I'm helping Daniel Matchett. He's the candidate for Rosendale and Darwin. You see the poster there. He's standing against Jake Berry. He's the former Tory chairman. And, oh, Danny's a great guy. I believe you're going to be speaking to him at some point. He's just fantastic, really working for it. And he just shows reform isn't just career politicians. You know, we're just common people, average people, stepping out the woodwork. And then there's a couple of candidates I'm helping with social media and other bits and babs.
Yeah, I will be interviewing Danny, you know, in a few period of time, very short period of time, and very grateful that he reached out to me. And I'll just say that to anyone: reach out to me, get hold of me. Let's do that. My observation is that we see the London bubble. We see the Westminster bubble surrounded by all their various reporters and the television cameras and all the rest in the London Borough, who are Farage is like the lightning rod. There is, you know, radio, television that he is doing across the board. Then you've got the candidates in the constituencies in the rest of the country, and I dare I say it, yes I do, actually outside London as well. And how do you think? I mean, I know some of them have had press on, like, say, for argument's sake, like BBC Southeast, BBC Northeast, and a Scottish candidate, David Kirkwood, was on Scottish television. Did a blinding interview, I have to say, where he is pushing back against climate change, etc. So there is newspaper articles for some, etc., but they are all organized. They're organizing this themselves. What I'm pointing out is that in many ways, more coverage of them is needed I believe, to show balance, and also to show balance of the country. There's 9 million people in London, 9 or 10 million people in London. The rest of us live outside that. Just wondered if you've got any comments on that.
Well, I think reform as a whole is getting coverage. I mean, as you say, Farage. I mean, we had question time last night. We had a member. We had Tyson tonight on the seven-party debate. But in terms as a whole, it's quite difficult because I don't think MSN media and things like that are very interested in, you know, average people. We're not talking, for example, Danny Matchett. We're not talking Nigel Farage 2.0. We're just talking somebody who's decided to stand up for what he believes in. He's been betrayed by previous parties. I hope he forgives me for saying that. And he's just an average person. There's nothing, truly exciting. There's nothing what will sell papers, which is unfortunate. But, he's doing what he can. We've got some exciting projects coming up. So it just totally depends on if the media wants us, we're here to take it. If the BBC, Sky, or whoever it is wants to talk to local candidates, they're more than welcome to. But with reform, the thing what sells is Farage at the moment, the Farage factor, and Lee Anderson and Richard Tice, David Bull. They're the people in the light. And I don't think there'll be very, many media desperately after chasing interviews with a candidate. Because, as it's difficult to say. I just totally think the multimedia and things like that, if they want to sell stories, if they want to sell papers, they're obviously going to target London. They're going to target Manchester. They're going to target the big areas people are interested in, unfortunately. Yet I'm interested in politics here. Yet all we see is local MPs, for example, Jake Berry, all over the papers and whatnot. So it's difficult, and as I addressed in a previous interview, the North and South divide truly shows, especially in general elections, or even the funding article. The Tories and Labour, how they're able to just pump things out. I mean, I'm sure you saw the Reform Party political broadcast we did. The Britain is broken, Britain needs reform. I thought it was fantastic. It's quiet, it's subtle, and it makes you focus. I mean, what did the Tories had on today? They had they spoke about at a conference yesterday. They just put a conference up. That's nothing exciting. That's not invigorating. The main thing is Rishi Sunak called this election. This isn't like, this isn't a regular snap election. He had all the time in the world to prepare for this. And it's the most embarrassing campaign, I think, ever in British politics. Apart from maybe Arthur Scargill's when he was with the Union Party, because that didn't go down well. But I think it's just embarrassing for the Conservatives. It's as if they just want to be taken into the mud.
You have to. I do wonder that. I just wondered if Sunak is committing suicide on behalf of everyone else, and frankly, they should have got rid of him months ago. And you're right, as in to let time lead, and then the economy, people feeling good or whatever. Even though the fact that people are not discussing how much debt we're in. And in regard to, he's not taking the fight to the Labour Party. And I'm going to give you a different perspective on the propaganda war that we are then finding. I'm just going to have to read this. But this book is in a well-known bookstore in the high street. So we'll leave it like that. Keir Starmer, the biography by Tom Baldwin, right? Now, on the back of the book, it's got positive comments written by Emily Maitlis, one of the news agents, right? The ex BBC presenter, right? So that's that. Now she says Tom Baldwin paints a picture of a man both deeply ordinary and quietly remarkable. If you want to understand what drives a man who would lead Britain, start here. Sharp, smart, and illuminating. So she's already made an assumption. But this is in a bookshop. And the other thing is that I do get a little bit tired of champagne socialists. So I'll just put that out there. An important, compelling book about a widely misunderstood political leader with a wealth of new detail and insight. Baldwin tells how Starmer led the most remarkable and rapid political party revival in modern British history. Blah, blah, blah. There's Robert Peston. And then, of course, Alistair Campbell has to come in.
Oh,
You know,
the king of
Tom Ball.
unbiasedness.
That's
Yes.
right. It's combined his commitment to genuine journalist inquiry with his deep understanding of the Labour Party. Okay.
I mean, can I just say, Starmer hasn't reformed Labour. All what's happened is the Tories have been so bad, people don't want to vote for the Conservatives, and they're probably in that decision where they only see two big parties, and that other party is unfortunately the Labour Party, and so people are just going to vote. I mean, I was speaking to a chap the other day when they said Starmer's obviously winning the popularity contest. I said, no, he's not. How many times does he bring up that his dad was a toolmaker? How many times does he bring up that his mum is a nurse, was a nurse? I mean, if you're going to say something, you want it to stick into people's heads. So is he that mundane that he thinks his words are not sticking into people's heads? Because, as Farage said, he doesn't need an auto cue. Farage stood at Clacton tonight for 2 hours on stage with no cue, no notes, nothing, just speaking from the heart. And now then you see Starmer mixing his notes up, going, oh, what am I meant to say, sort of thing, or stuttering. When he got asked on Question Time, is he a robot? And he went, it's strange. And, of course there's going to be bias on a book because they want their names on the back of the book, if you think about it. I mean, take for example, I've just placed an order for John Smith's autobiography. There's no major journalists on the back of that. You wouldn't be seen dead endorsing John Smith in these days in terms of Labour then, because Labour then was a lot stronger and had a much bigger spine than compared to now. And my political hero is John Smith, as I previously mentioned. I think he's a man who could stand up for himself, stand up for his party, and certainly not somebody like Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, as we should say. If you think about it, he's a man who kicked a member out of his shadow cabinet for standing next to union members on the picket lines. This is the Labour Party. These are meant to be the friends of the workers. These are meant to be the common people's friend. It doesn't seem very common to me. It seems patronising.
No, and just the comment is Guido Fawkes, the wonderful Guido site, a few days ago, I think over the weekend, it just revealed that Starmer's father may have actually owned a tool making factory. He was the owner of the tool making factory. Yes, he's a tool maker, but he's also the owner, employing. What does that mean? I mean, Keir Starmer, Sir Keir went to Reigate Grammar School. Good for him. He went to a grammar school.
I think when it comes to backgrounds, it's difficult. I mean, for example, if I was in the political front line, there'd be strategists saying, Jamie, mention everything about your past. Mention everything about your past, because it would win votes. I mean, look at Ed Davey, for example. What he's come out about being a full-time carer, that's admirable. He's doing that every day, looking after his son, whilst focusing on the political campaign. That is admirable, despite what people may think about Ed Davey. My heart goes out to him. I mean, he lost his mother at a young age. I lost my mother at a young age. I feel sympathetic. But for Keir Starmer to say, I grew up poor, 8 million people should vote for me because I grew up poor. I think there's so many people who grew up poor who have a completely different mindset, who think completely different to Sir Keir Starmer. I mean, fair play to him. He's built himself up and he's become the leader of a political party, sure. But the path he's taken is a truly, normal political path. I mean, if you look at Tony Blair, who was basically a Tory, he was a barrister, he was a lawyer, and then David Cameron, he was a media person. He worked in media and the press. Same with Boris Johnson. And so for Keir Starmer to have this trade, it's just a Bob standard political 101. They've not been in politics forever. It's not really something in their heart, and they've just jumped on the bandwagon in a way. I mean, yes, you could say that about Richard Tice, but for someone like Nigel Farage, who has done for over 30 years campaign for the British people and the British public for their democratic right, it sort of tips the scales, if you get me.
Starmer, the Labour manifesto, people are looking at the economics, but people need to be looking at the reform that they are on about or suggesting in regard to the constitution, the way that this country actually functions. Because it's then the next step from where Blair started in regard to the Reformation that he would call in the third way, and things can only get better and we will start zero from that point. That's the concern. It's a bit like Obama's third term being the Biden administration, as I call it right now. So that's my concern. But Jamie, and also you raise a very good point in regard to, to me, I've always thought Cameron, as it was said, was the heir to Blair. There's no difference. So the key thing is this, and it is very sad that that they didn't appoint David Davis. Very, very sad that he did not become leader of the Conservative Party, in my opinion. But I'll just say this, but Cameron, they parachuted people in. They started parachuting people to stand for the constituents that the various constituents up and down this country, and then centralizing everything to Conservative central office, meaning that the local Conservative parties, it was watering down their input into who they were going to put up. I just wondered what your thoughts are.
Well, very big example. Richard Holden, the chairman of the Conservative Party, was parachuted into Basildon unopposed. I mean, the Conservatives had a candidate lined up for 6 months. They were prepared to stand by them. They were going to try and win that seat as it was a safe seat, and then they just parachuted somebody in. It just shows that the Tories have no respect even for their own party members who have been with the party for God knows how long. And the fact that they're threatening to quit the Conservative Party, I've read, just because they've put their chairman in, and their chairman famously said, "I would never leave the north of England. It's the best place in the world." So people like that to abandon their integrity just shows you. I mean, Reform are a startup party in a way. We don't have any heartlands. We don't have any sort of safe seats. I think Clacton and the seaside towns will be our target areas. That's known, and Ashfield will certainly become the hub of Reform. Hopefully, touch wood. But it's confusing. I mean, the Tories have sort of just abandoned everything what made them Conservatives. Principles, honesty, integrity. You mentioned about David Davis not becoming leader. I mean, I could give an early example with Michael Portillo, somebody who was so conservative through and through. His middle name was Xavier. His father was involved in the Spanish Civil War, and I think if they would have gone down that route, I think they'd be in a different situation politically, because I think what I've forgotten his name. What William Hague said about as a conservative leader. Oh, we're going to establish heartlands. Oh, we're going to be the party of the common man again and the middleman sort of thing. Rishi's abandoned that. Liz Truss abandoned that. This campaigning. I mean, I've been on the street. I was in Crewe on a Saturday talking to people, helping Matt Wood, and it was just fantastic. And then I went to Nantwich as well, which is neighbouring, and just talking to people who were fed up. People who had voted Conservative their whole life, and now they feel abandoned, and now they're turning to Reform as an option. For example, people who have never voted before and who now think my vote actually matters. I think that's another point I want to get across. There's so many people in this country who maybe undervalue the power of a vote. I'm 17. I can't vote in this election. I've got to wait another 5 years before I can vote for, to decide their general election. And now I see people who are saying, "Oh, don't vote. It's a wasted vote." If you really want to vote, go on that tactical voting website if you're not sure. But that's another thing too. But I won't divulge into that.
What I will bring up William Hague there. Your comment about him, who I have to say I see as not who he portrayed himself to be. As some kind of young conservative, bloody blah, leading the party eventually, and then he was arch Remainer,
Mm,
and also then he steps aside as I think a recent article where they were talking about, I think it was in the Spectator, about Forsyth, who is one of Sunak's main advisor, if
mm,
not his main advisor, and was his best man at his wedding. Blah 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 blah. They're all close friends. I think they went to school together,
mm,
and the fact that Rishi then comes back from America 2015 looking for a safe seat, and then it turns out to be William Hague's, I believe,
mm,
old seat in Richmond there. So no, there is. I'm sorry, I don't apologise for this. There's a globalist mindset, and this is what they're saying.
mm,
Where Reform then and others are saying, could you put the citizens of this country first, no matter what party you are? And
mm.
that's the big difference. That I could say
Um,
this. I'd be interested to see what you think. That's what we're dealing with.
I mean, I've always said, I've asked when I was in the Rochdale by-election, I asked him, would you put constituents first or party first? You know, and he said constituents. And I think that's what all reform candidates do. I mean, we have the no whip policy at the moment, meaning we can do anything we want if it benefits our constituents the most. I think my main anger I have towards career politicians and people in Westminster who aren't doing a good job and hopefully voted out soon is that there is 630 of them, or give or take a couple, and they're voted by the British public, you know, United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, vote for them. Yet they don't value their seats. Yet they just think, oh, I'm in a job for life now. Oh, I can, you know, I can go out lobbying and earn £1 million, or as Scott Benson did, you know, lobby for a casino, and as someone now lobbying for a betting company. I mean, you think it's disgusting. I think if I was in that position, and this isn't me blowing my own trumpet, if I was in that position, you know, you'd rather resign than do anything dirty. People have put trust in you. You know, Scott Benson in his manifesto, for example, his brochure said he would put Blackpool South first, and yes, he did. He worked with Mark Butcher, and then he decides to just lobby legally and try and earn money off a genuine interest, which could have provided jobs for Blackpool. It's diabolical that politicians get into those positions, and I think that's another thing Reform want to do. You know, abolish the second chamber, replace it with an elected position, and engage in a proportional representation, which would abolish safe seats too, and that would make, you know, political fairness so much easier, not just for the right of the country, but also the left in a way, and for everybody. It benefits democracy. And I think we've lost touch with democracy, especially what Tony Blair tried doing, you know, how the European Union started to dictate too much. And especially after the referendum. I mean, I was about 10 or 11 when the referendum happened to leave Europe. But I remember it. I remember seeing, you know, if you voted leave, you was a baddie. If you voted remain, you was a goodie in a way. That's how the media portrayed it, you know. It's the end of times and such. And we can all say it's been delivered poorly, you know, it has. And that's why Reform are standing for what they stand for. You know, the World Economic, for example, World Economic Forum, they won't be dictated to, or even the ECHR. I mean, there's going to be some consequences in terms of, you know, there's going to be some things to stay in order to balance within the ECHR, obviously, because we've got to respect people, we've got to respect laws, we've got to remain, you know, in the structure of it all. But Reform's general message is very simple. You know, if you want to get rid of the same old, as I always keep saying, you know, vote Reform. If you want a change, as the manifesto said, don't vote Labour for change. Angela Rayner said it herself 15 times on Question Time. Reform, reform, reform. You know, she's crying out for it. Vote Reform. It's as simple as that. You know, the change is what would happen. The fully costed manifesto came out, the contract. You know, Nigel Farage personally signed it, and you know, people are saying, "Oh, it's not legally binding," but he will bind it. I guarantee you, if something goes wrong, he would resign over it, no doubt, because he's a man of integrity, he's a man of honesty, and I don't see any politician apart from the Reform Party doing that.
Very interesting, as Bennaby pointed out on Julia Hartley-Burr in a recent interview, where he said about a contract. She said, "Well, why aren't you calling a manifesto?" And he said, "Well, because most of the manifestos of late parties ignore. And I will say this from my own experience, Jamie, interviewing a number of candidates, and as you've mentioned, Matt, dear Matt in Napwich and Crewe and others, and then you've got people like Martin York in Congleton, and then Beverley England in South Suffolk, Nick Taylor in Norwich North, and Rob Keeney in Rob Rainey rather in Bolsover, etc. And it goes on. What I'm saying is that they are incredible, incredible people who are working hard, and I believe I've already spoken to some that are working so hard that they could actually win. They could win their seats. And what people don't realise is that there isn't £35 million behind Reform
No.
UK. My only, on a personal level, you've said it. There are incredible people outside London, and I do believe this by personal opinion. In this country, we've got two countries. We've got London and the rest of the country, and the rest of the country need to be listened to big time. And as Nigel and others have said, the country is falling apart. The and I do think there's a globalist mindset. I really do. Um, so that is what we're saying. This is what we're seeing unfolding. Because if you vote Conservative, you're just voting Labour. They are Labour light. Jamie, how do you see? We've got the election on the fourth of July. We're a week and just over a week and a half away. 2 weeks. So how do you see the momentum growing, especially if we remind ourselves that UKIP got 4 million votes and one MP? That was that pressure group then prompted Cameron to give an election on the EU. What are your thoughts how it's going to play over the next few weeks?
Well, I think it's going to be glorious. I mean, you've got Farage embarking on a tour of Britain, doing different events. And I think, regardless if we win one MP or 100, not saying we will, but imagine if we win, if Farage gets elected and maybe Lee Anderson and we have two, but we get, say, for example, 5, 6 million votes, 8 million votes, they will have so much say in the House of Commons, people will be dependent on those two to vote in their favour or not, because that's the voice of how many million. But I see some upsets. I do see some Portillo moments, and I've told this to everybody I've spoken to. I say, just because the polls are saying certain things, don't believe them. Because, I mean, you've seen Nigel Farage talk about poll bias. George Galway's recently talked about it because he's not polling at all. The only poll that did mention him has polled him at Rochdale at 1%, despite being the incumbent. He wasn't very happy with that. So it's going to be interesting. I think my personal prediction, this isn't a party prediction, my personal prediction is 15 seats. That's what I would set my target. Most polls are saying 3 to 4. And that's the big dogs. That's Tice, that's Lee Anderson, Farage, and Ben Habib at Wellingborough. But I would like to see some more, common people, as it was, people like Danny Matchett, people like Matt Wood, people like Gary Sutherland down south, other candidates, just general people. Because I say it time and again, Westminster representation not only needs proportional representation, but it needs the people who they are, sort of speaking out for. Imagine if an average person or, sort of a constituent of, say, Jake Berry was in Westminster as an MP, somebody who's experienced the hardship, someone who's experienced the bad policies, someone who knows, and someone whose voice and the vote in the Commons matters most. Just imagine that, Yes, you will have some Labour people and some Conservatives who are like that, constituency MPs, but imagine someone who would fight their entire political career just for you, just for your constituency, not a globalist threat, not lobbying so they can go to Dubai and drink how many bottles of champagne and have big breakfast, somebody who just wants to fight for you. I mean, I'm just an activist, an advisor, a helper, and I'm fighting every day, every minute I can, every minute, someone will message me, Jamie, what should I do? Or, Jamie, can you come help me? And I think it's fantastic to be involved in reform, because the amount of people I've met, other young people, other young supporters in different constituencies and different areas across the country, getting involved and just getting the passion out there, because that's something which I think is doubted upon. I mean, you mentioned media bias. You talk about how most photos of reform show the older members of support, but in reality, there's thousands of people like me. Or maybe not exactly like me, because that would be a nightmare for some. But people. There's lots of young people getting involved and just promoting democracy. It helps with Farage. We're polling so high with 18 to 24s at the moment because Farage is big on TikTok, he's big on Twitter, or X, and he's big on YouTube. And that's something which is Reform's secret weapon, is social media.
I mean, I think you're right. It is Reform's secret weapon in regards to social media, which is something that you personally are very good at. And I would totally and utterly underline what you've said. When it's like talking to you, and you are communicating your views, your conclusions as a young people, which I think is incredible at your age. I don't mean that in a patronizing way, because I am really heartened by talking to you. It's like, and Rob, and underline, and etc. There he's expressing at the age of 26, 25, 26, what's going on in the constituency in an amazing way. It's a real privilege. It's very, very heartening, and others. When you've got dear Luca and Barnsley, managing David and Bob's from Barnsley North, Barnsley
Yes.
South, their campaign. I mean, it's incredible that a young man at 21 is doing that. That's extremely heartening. And no, I think would you say the biggest concern is, well, I think you've hinted at that, which is voter apathy. That is our biggest challenge, Jamie.
Absolutely. I mean, not only voter apathy and generational voting, but it's breaking the stigma. I mean, people need to not wake up, but people need to, realise what's going on. People need to look at their roads and see how poor they are and check who's in their council. People need to vote for their interests, not which party they like, not which leader they like. I mean, I can say that about Farage, for example. I mean, it's about getting things done, and Reform haven't had any chance to prove, apart from Lee Anderson, of what their seat or constituency like, and he didn't have an awful long time. You could say that the same with George Galloway in Rochdale, for example. And it's to say that Reform offer a clean slate. When they say in the manifesto, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. I mean, 5 years of Labour, anything could happen. I mean, Gordon Brown, for example, didn't mention a few things in his manifesto, and yet he didn't last long, did he? So I'm optimistic. I really hope for the best, and I just hope people vote on the day and they want change, and hopefully they vote Reform. Or if they don't have a Reform candidate, somebody they believe in.
It's going to be very interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting how certain things are unfolding. I think you're right. I think there's going to be some shocks. Doesn't mean we cannot assume that people, with respectfully, the Farage, Tyson, Abebe will actually win. Others may in fact win as well. So that could be a very interesting dynamic.
Oh.
Don't get me wrong. I hope they do. But people have got to be prepared for that dynamic to really then be able to build on that and march forward. And one of the wonderful things about Lee Anderson has been on this incredible political journey. Member of the Labour Party at one point, and then joins the Conservative ex-miner and all the rest. You cannot argue with that kind of pedigree, where it talks about, as you've said, real people doing a real job in a real constituency, trying to engage with the constituents to say, I love that, a no whip policy. What's best for our constituents?
Yeah.
Then they'll be able to lobby that and all the rest.
We've seen it over here, for example, in the Hyndburn constituency, in Rossendale and Darwin, which is the neighbouring constituency, where you had when they was elected, Jake Berry and Sarah Brickcraft said, we're going to put the people of Haswindon and Accrington and these areas first. We're going to put them first. We're going to make this a better constituency. And one of the first things they did was vote against the Free School Meals Act. And you think that's the first thing you would think of. You don't have to be an expert in politics, to think that's the first thing what would benefit families across the constituency. To put taxpayers' money at good use and help relieve those who are vulnerable, those who need it, because that £4 or £5 a day you save, could go to lots of things. And you think it's diabolical that it took a sports superstar, Marcus Rashford and then other celebrities to overrule it. Not the politicians people elected, but people who are doing their own thing, people who are celebrities, It's amazing. It's to think these politicians should be the ones making the decisions, yet they're making the wrong ones. And we've seen it time and time and again. The Rwanda plan, for example, not thought about, no logistics survey, nothing. It wasn't going to work anyway. Sunak knew that. He was flogging a dead horse. We can all admit that. And because he says, "Oh yeah, I'll promise to deport people to Rwanda," and then he quietly says, "After the election, vote me in." And it's just so frustrating. You don't have to be a reform supporter. You don't have to be actively involved in politics to know that the decisions being made are not benefiting you, financially, mentally. Anything from healthcare with the waiting list at an all-time high, with the roads, traffic congestion, and all that. To farming subsidies being stopped, and the ability, the idea that we could go without British wheat and just ship it in from France, despite not being in a European trade deal. It makes no sense. I'm sure someone like yourself, with all the knowledge you have, are angry too.
Yes, I am very angry, and I see it. I make no apologies for this. See it on a global level of what is actually going on, and they want globalism where we need to be growing our own food. We have huge problems with food, I believe, with food security that's not being discussed, and we need to support our farmers. And the other thing is that, as other people greater than me have said, we need to begin to try make things and sell things on the open market within our world markets. We're not about a wealth distribution economy. Well, we've got to create wealth. Well, unfortunately, after the lockdowns, no, don't worry.
No. It's this
Go.
contract what says, all those things you just said. It's this contract here. This isn't the up-to-date one. This is the draft. But this is the blueprint to British, integrity, to British farming. £3 billion to British farmers in subsidies, in welfare, and that to support people, to support their family industry, not so they just shut down and they can plant trees or whatever Boris Johnson suggested on it.
Well,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, not at all. But you just raised that. You raised that suddenly. All these green nutbag policies, as far as I'm concerned, that's my own personal opinion. Suddenly, no, net zero. That needs to stop. It's about it's. Sorry.
There's preservation, and then there's going too far. I mean, we've got nature reserves, we've got wildlife reserves, we've got zoos. We've got everything to preserve. We've got forests still being planted. I mean, I look at America, to be totally frank, with a Green New Deal in a way. I think that needs to be replicated in a smaller scale, obviously, but maybe looking at the moorlands to land which is not used, land which is just there for walking. Why isn't that being, mass cultivated with trees instead of actual fields where crops are being produced, from farm to table sort of thing,
Well, without being called a conspiracy theorist, which I am virtually every other day, this is about control, population control. This is about providing sadly creating a situation where people cannot afford to pay energy bills, etc., etc., food going up, and you know, people have forgotten the skills of growing vegetables, etc. We need to learn all that, but that is all part of it, and then not being explained that the subsidies for Green New Deal is all added to people's electricity
Yeah.
and gas bill, etc., etc. And then, with great respect, you know, what do trees do with CO2? They create oxygen. That piece of science is not described in schools properly or explained
Mm.
enough.
No, but that links back to what I was saying about politicians fighting for you. If you know, as you mentioned, you know, the resources farmers, for example, the constituent. I hate to keep mentioning him. He's going to be absolutely mad at me because he's got his interview soon. But Danny Matchett, but areas of this constituency, he's got lots of farms in. Just imagine if this area of Rosendale didn't have those farms, all that industry, all those jobs, you know, families, all that gone, just because of a policy which is made in Westminster by the establishment who haven't considered the people it affects. Maybe they have and they've, you know, said, oh, we're sorry for losing your land. But if you think about it, it's more profitable at the moment for a farmer to plant daffodils and wildflowers than it is to grow and cultivate crops. It's
Well,
insane.
it is insane. And then we look at the protests that have happened in Europe in regard
Mm,
to the farmers and why, and the fact that
mhm,
you're asking them to, as Rob Reaney in Bolsover says, double glaze your fields, put solar
mm,
panels, and then that raises another issue about the amount of energy that they don't create that the country actually needs. Um, I don't, you know, I don't hold those views in regard to, all right, green energy, great. If the solar panels that come on save you a bit of energy from the sun, fantastic. I'm all for that.
mm,
But however, we need to have, to me, nuclear. There is small ways of
mm,
doing that and incredible powerful. And yes, I would dig coal. I've got no problem with coal and oil. There are certain ways we can do that with coal capture, etc. And with oil, no, drill it. We need it, and civilizations need cheap energy
mm.
to prosper. Um,
Um,
Jamie, sorry, and I'm conscious that I've spoken far too much.
uh,
Is there anything we've before we end really, and we've gone over our 45-minute marks, young man? I've said that. Is there anything else that you want to say? Is there any other observation that you wish to observe? Tell us.
um, I I just want to basically see and say more passion. You know, I mean, I'm extremely passionate, and it's nice to have this platform to try and get it out there. And I hope I've made a good example of myself. And I think I would encourage more young people. You know, if you're watching this, or if I shared it to you, or you know, if you to come out the woodwork, regardless of the political party you want to go into. I mean, you know, I've gone from being a Labour socialist to being a reformist in a way, you know, with, because you know it's not my politics what's changed, it's the party what's changed, and my beliefs are in reform, and that's all I wanted to add because they're a solid party. There's a couple of things which you know are unlineary, but as I said previously, you know, there's things you won't like about yourself, there's things I don't like about myself. We don't like everything 100%. And I think with the reform contract, there's a couple of things where we're like, oh, and I won't give examples, but overall, it's fantastic. And I just want to say, you know, be passionate, get your passion out there because you know I'm passionate 100% of the time. You know, I'm just like, oh, I'm ready for election night.
I hear you, Jamie, and I totally respect you for it. And I've I've I just find it extremely invigorating. Young people who are passionate about why they want to engage and how they want to see their country moving forward. And so, thank you for that. And I'm also,
No
it's
worries.
wonderful when you were talking about John Smith, um, someone I did respect. and the fact that you're talking historically why you've started to form certain opinions, um, which is also very gratifying. It's brilliant because it means that you're thinking that through. But yeah, Jamie, thank you for joining me. I'm
No,
going
thank
to
you.
play us out, and I think what would be great in a short period of time before the election, let's have another discussion. It'd be lovely to have this
Yeah,
discussion
that'd
with
be
you.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you very
and
much.
I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to play us out. Thank you for listening to a very privileged conversation with an amazing young person. So I just thank you for that. If you aren't a member of the channel, please like, subscribe, and follow the Southern Report. I would be very grateful. Jamie, don't disappear. Stay there on the other side, and I'll say goodbye. But thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.